Hey everyone, we just want to take a moment here to tell you about a podcast that we've become friends with. We're kind of co-podcast friends with another show, and it's called What It's Like To.
It's a podcast by Elizabeth Pearson Garr, and she interviews people who've done amazing things. For example, one of the episodes is what it's like to sail solo across the Atlantic Ocean. Another one is what it's like to be in the Secret Service.
Things you would not know, and then they get into the nitty gritty and really talk about that experience.
And you get to live vicariously through their experience. It's really cool.
Yeah, there's one on there that says how to start a college. Do you know what that's about, Adam?
I do not.
I think maybe that's one where our own Adam Braus is a guest. So be sure to check out What It's Like To wherever you get podcasts.
Welcome, everyone, to Solutions from the Multiverse.
Ooh, very formal. Welcome, everyone. Hello.
This is Scott Maupin joining me with Adam Braus. We're going to switch. We're going to switch identities.
Hi, I'm Adam Braus. I have a solution for you today. Let me just open up my box of solutions and pull one out. Here it is.
Here they are.
Macaroni should be straight. No, I don't know. I'm tired of curved noodles. No, thank you. Well, Adam, I have to say, happy birthday.
Happy birthday. It's not birthday. It's not
Happy birthday, America.
Oh, yeah, America.
Because this is, I mean, it's not right now, but this is coming out on the 4th of July. It
is.
Ahead enough to know what the next Tuesday in line is. So happy birthday, America.
Fireworks.
Yeah.
America.
Hold on. Oh, wow. The special effects budget on this episode is going to be
really
amazing.
Good. Really good.
Boom. That all sounds good, right? I should. Boom. Oh, that was a crazy one. Oh, my gosh. Such a shame this is an audio-only medium.
You know, sometimes it goes afterwards.
Then there's the ones that I don't know who thought this was a great thing to include, but you know the ones that just go flash and then they have one big kaboom? And you're like,
yeah.
I mean, I guess that's impressive, but I don't know, man. That's
you can test the speed of sound.
You're putting the weight on the sound and not on the like sparkly explosion. And that's the wrong side to put your energy on. I feel like I don't care how it sounds. I wanted to see it. I wanted it to look cool.
I don't know. I don't know. I think the fireworks. My opinion on fireworks is no individual firework. I mean, it's all impressive, but what really makes a good fireworks show is like the composite effect of the fireworks together. Mm-hmm. You know, the composition, painting in the sky with flame. How cool.
It's also
but any single firework, I'm like, whatever.
How even a fireworks show follows the same basic tenets of like a story arc or any form of entertainment where they're like stand-up comedy or movies where they're like bombastic opening. All right. So to kind of slow down in the middle, we're going to kind of go and then, but you know, it's going to be the end when we start ratcheting it up again. And you're like, here's the end. And you're like, oh, this is the finale. Like it's just a natural
finale.
thing. You feel like that first act, second act, third act structure that you see in movies, you see in fireworks, you see in stand-up comedy. It seems to be pervasive across lots of different types of creative
even fireworks,
entertainment.
Which is like really.
They model the show at the same, like if they did all of it at the beginning, then they just kind of puttered out at the end. You'd be like, no, bad show. You didn't have a big finish. The microwave popcorn version of the story arc, where at the very end you just get a couple, just pop it when they're too far apart. Yeah. You're like, well, it's done now. Hit the stop.
Yeah. Okay. It's 4th of July. I think we should do something a little bit themed on America.
Okay.
I'm
down.
And
we're gonna throw tea into water.
That's right.
Get on a ship, knock the boxes.
You had a good question. What would the
modern day Boston Tea Party?
Boston Tea Party be? That was a good question.
Because you're not going to throw tea into a harbor and get people mad about it as much anymore. But what would you? No. How could you rile people up?
I was going to say microchips.
And you take them and
you just got to take a bunch of microchips and toss them into the ocean.
Destroy them, or
yeah. I mean, I would destroy them. Seawater would destroy the microchips right away
for sure.
Salt.
But
unless there was some way to get the salt off.
It feels like as though in today's world that would be an attack on a company. You know, like it's so diversified now. You would be like, we've hijacked the Intel ship and we've put their microchips into the ocean, but that's not an attack on it. I don't know if America is going to take that as I mean,
well, it's supposed to be that's technically the Tea Party was a tax
protest.
Thing, right? So you'd have to do some kind of tax protest. Yeah. Okay. We're talking about taxes already. So, this is made by a decision for me which solution to do. Okay.
Great.
The solution is what I call a democratic tax code. And what I'm, or not tax code even, just okay, let me explain. So we have this designation called like nonprofit corporations, right?
Okay. Yeah.
It's cool, and they're nonprofit, and then you can apply for 501c3 certification from the IRS, and then you don't have to pay taxes on your profits, on your net revenue.
From a dum-dum perspective, which I'm at, if you're in a nonprofit, you can make money, but that money goes to the salaries of the people who work, like they get paid still. But the idea is that you don't generate revenue above that, or what makes it a nonprofit?
So a nonprofit company has no owners.
Okay.
So it has no stock,
no shareholders.
It has governance, it has some kind of governance structure like a board and an executive director or whatever, but it has no stockholders. And you can't disperse profit to stockholders because it doesn't have stockholders.
Okay.
And you can't disperse profit to anyone because it has no stockholders.
But it can generate revenue, which it would use
it
to
can make millions of dollars.
Cover its own operations, including the salaries of the people who work there or whatever. Okay.
And then can then any net revenue profit, like above cost that you have, you can only do two things with it. You can either spend it on the operations of the business, grow the nonprofit.
Okay.
Or you can donate it to another nonprofit.
Okay.
That's it. That's all you can do. You can't give it to a shareholder.
No sticking it in giant canvas stacks with dollar signs and then handing it to people.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. You're not allowed to do that. Unless you're like, there are ways to work around it, which is like scammy. And
unless you're the give people stacks of money nonprofit and that's your goal that you're trying to
or
do.
if you're a nonprofit. So what people do to get around this is they create for-profit consulting businesses that sell sham consulting services to their own nonprofit, and then the nonprofit gives that for-profit consulting company all the money.
Okay.
Because like consulting companies can be like, oh, we'll create a survey for you and a PowerPoint, and you give us $5 million. And it's like, is that worth it? It's like, yeah, whatever we charge is what it's worth, And
if you're willing to pay it, and since I am both selling and buying, I am in fact willing to pay my own price.
Exactly.
So
it's like the left hand paying the right.
Yes.
Now, if you do that a lot, you can lose your tax exempt status. But the IRS is extremely like asleep at the wheel on all this. And it's really hard. I mean, there isn't a lot of enforcement going on. So anyways, there's a lot of crap around this. This is what billionaires do. They all start family foundations, and then they use that, and they then have consultants that are there, and you can do all kinds of really bad stuff around all this. But anyways, I want to suggest that we create a new designation of corporation.
Okay.
And we change the tax code for that designation. So I believe we should create a designation called a democratic corporation.
Okay.
And if you're a democratic corporation, then I believe you should pay the current level of corporate taxes. And then I think we should double corporate taxes for all non-democratic institutions.
Okay. So
that's the suggestion. That's the solution.
This is going to affect all companies, and then some of them are going to opt into being a democratic institution. Their rates stay the same. If you choose not to opt into that, your rates double. Did I get that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then if you want to you could start a new corporation. Your decision would be, should I start a non-democratic institution, a democratic institution, or a nonprofit institution? So now you pretty much have kind of three choices. And the reason why I'm saying this for 4th of July is our democracy is like really in trouble. And when I say democracy, I don't just mean voting, which we've talked a lot about on this show, and we know is important, voting, democracy, whatever, and just government in general. But I'm talking about democracy as a whole. Like, democracy is not just your government. It's all decision-making, If you say we're a democracy, but then you say, well, 95% of the time I spend working, and I work at a company where I can be instantly fired, and some guy above me is basically my slave driver boss who can decide everything about my job and what I do, and I have no say in anything. It's like, well, that's not democracy. That's slavery. That's total, indentured servitude.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of freedom in that situation
right.
at all.
So if we want to incentivize creating institutions that are democratic corporations, I think we should give them, we should say you pay the current corporate tax rate. And if you're an oligarchic or kind of monarchical authoritarian corporation, then you should have to pay extra taxes, because you're essentially, first of all, you're kind of a danger to the democratic system. And second of all, you get to operate with maybe certain efficiencies that a democratic institution doesn't get. And therefore, your profits should be taxed more. And people can fight about it one way or the other. But I think the solution that I'm suggesting is to give an advantage to corporations and people who believe in democracy, and to give a disadvantage to people who are authoritarian or oligarchic.
Okay, well, I'm CEO Scott, and my CFO has just come to tell me this option, and I like the idea of not paying higher taxes. So tell me, what do I have to do to qualify to be a democratic corporation?
I think I was learning more about this, and I think there's really like 3 options. These are kind of like co-ops. So what you currently call this is co-ops, but I think co-ops sound pretty limp-wristed.
Co-op makes me think of a grocery store.
Yeah, exactly. So I like to call these democratic institutions. Right. So I call these democratic corporations, and there's really 3 types. There's a consumer-owned democratic corporation. There's a employee-owned democratic corporation, and a not publicly owned, but publicly governed democratic corporation.
Okay.
So what that means is you either have your employees own, essentially, they get stock. They don't have to own the company, but they have control of the governance of the company. So they can vote the rule has to be one person, one vote. So it can't be like, oh, I have 50,000 shares, therefore I get 50,000 votes and everybody else has 10 shares, so I can overrule everyone. It has to be like, no, you can have 50,000 shares and I'm just an employee and we have the same number of votes. It doesn't have to be ownership, because the ownership can still be whoever owns it, but it's the governance. So the governance has to be employees, consumers, like customers, or the public. Okay. Meaning you have what I would call a democratically representative board. So your board has to be, it can't just be a bunch of millionaires who own the business. And it can't just be a bunch of millionaires. And it can't be what a bunch of like left-wing people try to do with this is like neoliberals will say, well, we have a black person and a woman and a this and a that, and therefore it's a democratic board, but they're all millionaires. It's like, no, you have to have your board be representative of the public, which means they have to be normal working people, nurses and stuff. Like they have to just be like normal teachers and nurses and unemployed people. Yeah. And, you need to actually make a board that's actually made up of like normal people. And then those people have to be the governance of your corporation. Maybe that one doesn't really work exactly, but I think there should be an option for that.
It's like jury duty, where you could just be,
yeah.
The idea is it's a cross section of people, but not cherry picked out to be like, I like this person, right, these super rich people and these super affluent people or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Maybe it would be like through like a nomination and election process, Now I'm nervous about the idea not working because I don't know how to do a democratic board. Bah. Okay, I'll stop being nervous.
It's a holiday. Relax. I mean, our voices are here now, but you and I were probably at a barbecue, sitting there eating hot dogs or potato salad, something. I don't know. You don't have to be amped up right now. This is relaxing holiday time.
Floating down a lazy river on the 4th of July with a mint julep in my hand.
You say that one 4th of July, I was in Missoula, Montana, visiting friends. Ooh. And we did in fact do a float down the big river there, and classic the most 4th of July thing that's ever happened. While we're floating down this river, a bald eagle just like screeds overhead and just flies and hovers for a bit. We're just like, okay, it's the 4th of July. Bald eagles are out. We're floating down the river. It's the classic American
this
picture.
Is America. Yeah, that's awesome. My parents have a bald eagle that literally. Well, they don't have them in the house.
I thought you were going to say, but they do some sort of floating situation. But you're like, my parents have a bald eagle. I'm like,
well, they do. He sits right on a branch right outside the window of their bedroom, and so they often will wake up and there's this giant bald eagle just like looking in their bedroom like,
that would be terrifying. Those things are not small. They are big.
No, they're big. They're big.
He's like outside your window staring at you, and you're like, now I feel endangered. All right, okay. So this is. I understand you're the endangered species, but this is really menacing. I don't.
No, they're not endangered anymore.
They're done. What?
Bald eagles are not endangered
So
anymore.
you can go like hunting and getting them, or
I mean, I don't think you can hunt them.
I don't think you can either.
I think they're still protected, but they're not.
Okay.
They're not endangered.
Good job, bald eagles, getting busy. I guess
It is kind of good. It means that it worked. Yeah. So their population is increasing, and they are what is called least concern.
Cool.
Yeah, they're of a very low level of concern.
I'll stop caring about bald eagles then. Great.
Yep. Because their populations recovered by 2007, bald eagles are still protected, but they're not. But they're delisted from the Endangered Species Act.
Would you eat bald eagle if it was offered to you in a hypothetical scenario? Happy birthday, America, by the way. I'm just curious.
I would not, only for fear of being canceled.
Wow. You eat horses, you're not going to eat bald eagles.
I know. I love horses.
An interesting thing.
Delicious.
Okay. There's the horse whisperer, and then there's the horse like chomperer.
Nibbler.
And the horse nibbler. The horse nibbler.
The horse nibbler. Yeah, that's what I am. I'm the horse nibbler. Yeah. Yeah. The reason I got this idea for the Democratic thing was twofold. One is I've created three nonprofits in my life, but in the last 2 years, I created two. Mm-hmm. And so I learned a lot about, and I didn't use a lawyer. I do my own self-lawyering. So I just filled it all out myself and Googled around, and it was actually extremely doable. Like, I really recommend no one uses a lawyer. Just look. They have great documentation, and you might say, oh, this is hard or it takes me time, but you're going to pay that lawyer so much. Like, imagine you were paying yourself the amount you were going to pay the lawyer, and just pay yourself to do it. And it's super easy to do. The IRS gives that stuff out like cotton candy. Like, it's not difficult.
Well, and get. you in your case, you've started two. If you went the lawyer route, you would have had to pay that same lawyer 2 times. And when you learn it yourself, that knowledge is still in you for the second one, making the second one, I would think,
true.
easier
it was
to
way
do.
Easier.
Yeah. That's
right.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I was doing that, I also was learning about how. So people might not know that. I didn't know this either, and I have like a lot of training in political philosophy and stuff. Is, I guess, when you say socialism today, most people still think that when people say socialism, they mean government control of the market. But actually, which is called like central planning or government, state planning, state planned economy, centrally planned economy. And that's what a lot of people, when they're arguing against socialism, they argue against that. They're like, well, we don't want everything decided in Washington, Right. But actually, if you go talk to actual modern socialists who are like, in universities and in like the labor movement and stuff, and you say like, what is socialism? They do not say... They do not say a centrally planned economy where some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. decides how many boots are made this quarter or whatever. Yeah. They would say that's insane. Like, no, we tried that. It didn't work. I mean, that didn't work. And so we don't do that anymore. And what they would say is one of the most important and sort of the vanguard of socialism is welfare stuff, which we talk, which we've talked about, Medicare for all, which is sort of central planning, but not really. It's more like just like a little bit of a boost in everybody's sort of step.
Well, and not having to pay for the infrastructure you use based on your use of it in the city. Like, I don't have to pay the fire department to come out and put a fire out on my house because it's part of living. Yeah. You're right. That's the other part of it, is like kind of centrally, what are more rationally provided centralized services, where there's like a natural monopoly. But that's not even socialism. I mean, even total free market people believe in, or not total free market people, but most people believe in like what have natural monopolies, like firefighters, police, military. It's like a natural monopoly, and therefore the government should take it over. But I even mean like modern socialism. They would say, yeah, Medicare for all. It's not exactly a natural monopoly, although it is more efficient than a bunch of private insurers doing things. But they would say that little welfare is good. But the other thing they would say is democratic workplaces. That's actually the vanguard of modern socialism. So I was learning about that, and there's this great website called democracyatwork.org, and we can put it in the link or whatever, but Democracy at Work advocates for corporations and workplaces that use democratic processes.
And they don't just do it because it's good. It also makes it so the corporation actually runs better. I mean, people make better decisions because people, the wisdom of the crowd or whatever.
What would an example be of a democratic workplace policy? Like, just outside of the title, what would that look like?
Well, there's different ways to approach it. Like, for example, there's things like REI is a customer owned a customer governed co-op, and technically, if you're a member at REI, you can then vote in certain things, and you can actually kind of help govern the corporation. However, REI has they've so manipulated that behind the scenes and kind of with their bylaws that actually any run-of-the-mill member has very little power, and it's really just controlled by the corporate sort of structure. So I would say that REI would not qualify as in its current structure. Probably in its earlier avatars, it would qualify for this sort of democratic corporation tax code. But if you do like REI, you say, "Oh, we have members and we're a co-op," but then you completely eliminate and sort of obfuscate the power of those rank and file members, then it would be like, no, that's fraud to call yourself a democratic corporation. You're just sort of masquerading. But there are other corporations that are fully owned by their employees or governed by their employees. Like I think Woodman's grocery store is a large employee co-op. So the employees decide, they vote on everything. They're just like a board. They vote on like who's CEO. They vote on like salaries. They vote on like deals and stuff. Yeah. So
they're really involved
by vote
to a degree. Like each person has a tiny amount of involvement in the overall structure that adds up together to be the democratic corporation.
Right. And you can do it via ownership. A lot of people, I think, generally think, oh, well, that means they must all own one share of the company and there must only be as many shares of the company as people. But you can do these interesting things where you can actually make ownership stock and then you can make governance stock. And so people can have like one share of governance stock, but then somebody else could have like 1 million shares of ownership stock. So they could still be the sort of capitalist who owns it, but it doesn't convert then to them then being the tyrant of the corporation who gets to fire people and just tell everybody to go to hell. It's like, no, that person owns it, but it's a democratic institution, and therefore they participate in a kind of complex thing where they're the governance people who might be employees or members or clients or customers or members of the public. They actually are the ones deciding what happens via vote.
Well, and if my stake in the company is ownership percentage based on like the number of people working there instead of governance, then if you're so successful at your one location that you want to open a second location and staff it with people, I'm going to be against that because that cuts my ownership in half, right? Like I own this much of the company right now. If we double the number of employees and everyone, like we split that 100% of the company up, mine goes, I lose half of my ownership. But if it's governance,
well, but you also, if you open a new store, you would argue that the value of the company's doubling as well. So it's going to be the same or more. It might even more than double.
So I get a smaller percentage of a larger number, but it equals out. Okay.
It should be the same. It should be the same. Amount. Yeah.
But governance makes it more or less like we're all pitching in the decision making. It's not about owning as much as it is about participating,
Exactly. It's democracy.
Yeah.
It's the difference between a government where, if, for example, if there was no right for women to vote and then the government was all the men just deciding everything, then the women would be like disenfranchised. Like they don't get a say. They still live in that society. They still have to follow the law. They still have to do, but the men get to decide everything. It's the same thing in a non-democratic corporations. Like these boards, these wealthy, 1% people who own the corporations, they decide everything, and everybody else just has to do whatever they say. It's almost a form of like, it's not democratic. It's not a free. You're not living in a free society really. If the only freedom you have is every 4 years you get to go cast one ballot. You have to have many parts of your life have to be governed by democracy, participatory democracy, in order to really say I live in a free country, right? I mean, otherwise it's like it's a mockery of freedom, and democracy.
Then if I'm now making the decision, I'm deciding, do I want to do this democratic company? And then the cost for not doing that is I know that I'm going to pay a double tax rate or whatever. I'm going to be like,
yeah.
I want to do it my way.
Instead
I
of
want
30%, you're going to
I
pay
want to run
60%.
this thing as the king of my company instead of as the president of a Democrat.
The king tax.
Yeah, then I'm going to pay extra in order to do that. And some people will probably do that because they want to have the control. And some people will go,
be
hey,
a tyrant.
we're trying to make
tyrant
money.
tax. Oh,
Why
yeah,
would
the
I ever do
tyrant
that?
tax. Yeah.
Tyrant tax.
I love
That's
that.
going to not make
the
it sound
tyrant tax. That's what the
desirable.
Democrats should call it. Yeah. Well, because it's not desirable, right? We should be criticizing these people who are eager to be. They're power hungry. You know, these people who are eager to be in control and not willing to be democratic members of a democratic workplace, which is essentially important. It's like one of the most critical parts of a democratic society.
We're going to have to switch
work.
CTO to stand for Chief Tyrant Officer instead.
That's
it's gonna people are gonna like take it on as a badge where they're like, of course I'm a tyrant. No,
CTO.
some people.
I mean, sure, that would be fine. I mean, I think it's fine if people own up to it. The problem is today is, you know, you can be a tyrant. You know, you can be someone who is not a part of a Democrat. You're openly running an oligarchical, tyrannical corporation where it's your way or the highway, and you get to manipulate and control probably, you know, thousands of people's lives, maybe hundreds of thousands of people's lives are completely at your whim, and that's just tyranny. That's horrible, you know. And just because it's like in the economy instead of in government, like, who cares? It's still tyranny,
right?
You know, like, and I'm not saying they should. I think people get confused though at this point because now they're thinking, oh, I'm trying to like divvy everything up equally. I'm like, no, they can still own 100% of the corporation could be owned by them. They could get all the profits and, you know, they can own it all, but the governance would be from this collective governance, right? Whether it's the members or a democratic board or the employees.
Which you would also hope in addition to enfranchising and empowering people throughout your organization, you would also hope that kind of community mind that you're using to make these decisions can help not make any mistakes that a one person situation might have where they go, I have this idea and I don't have any like perspective on it, so let's implement it, and oh no, it's a disaster. Where a collective might be like, somebody would be like, hey, I see a potential problem with that you might not see, and we can bash it out before it becomes a actual thing that's happening.
Yeah, and there's such cool tools now that people, like large groups of people, can use to like. So I think the best definition, I have to give a shout out to where I learned this from. And I don't love the guy politically, but I think he is quite inspiring in terms of the way he speaks and whatnot. Which
Abraham
is
Lincoln.
Beto O'Rourke.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I was going to say Beto O'Rourke. So Beto, Robert O'Rourke, as I should say, Robert Beto. So ridiculous.
How do you get Beto from Robert? That's an interesting.
Roberto. It's the Spanish.
Roberto. Okay. That answers it. Beto. Thank you very much. I was not connecting those dots.
Yeah. He does the Spanish thing where he has this horrible American accent and he launches into Spanish. It's so funny. Anyways, he is inspiring. I saw him in person speak in San Francisco, and it was quite cool. But one thing he said when he was speaking, which I thought was quite good, is he said democracy is the system that can, not just the political system, but the pattern, the ethos that best maximally utilizes the genius of a group of people. And I think that's so cool. And I think he's totally right. That's really true.
Run that by me one more time.
So it maximally utilizes the genius of a group of people.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah. You can pull the best ideas from the best people and continue to do that.
Yeah. Like how many times, I don't know if you've noticed this. I've noticed this in corporations that I've worked for and with like teams that I've worked for. And I've worked on companies and teams and hospitals and all these different organizations where they bring in consultants. And then the consultants, you pay these consultants like ungodly amounts of money, like just gobs and gobs and gobs of money.
Okay.
They get paid usually 2 to 3 times more than the rank and file, like the 2 to 3 times more than their counterpart. Right. Like I remember one time where I had a counterpart where I was the consultant and she was the counterpart, and she was making like 4 times less than I was.
Whoa.
And we were doing the same job. Like totally.
And
but consultants are just paid enormously high amounts of money.
So how does that happen? Like were you brought in to Especially,
you're
dude.
brought in. Yeah, you're brought in. You're considered to be so knowledgeable and so like better, so much better that you're able to be paid like so much more. But it's a scam because the reality is, in my experience, consultants usually come in and they usually just present, they present some strategy that they come up with and do some research or whatever. But what they present in recommendations is usually just what some millennial or like nowadays X-Gen person who started 6 months ago, they have the same ideas. But nobody listens to them because they started 6 months ago.
They don't have that title after their name of consultant or whatever.
Yeah, because it's hierarchical, because it's this sort of pyramidal system where you shit rolls downhill and nobody gives a shit about the person who started 6 months ago. But the consultants come in at the top because they're kind of sanctioned by above to do this. And usually the consultant might be the same age as the younger employee, but they're just like a hotshot consultant who like works at Accenture. So they're given all this credence, but they're usually just recommending the same thing as a lower down person.
Yeah, and one of the only reasons they're listened to is because when you bring them in, that's part of the thing. You're like, I will bring you in and listen to you, instead of like, I have all these people that already know my business inside and out that I'm choosing not to listen to.
I'm choosing to not listen to them.
I'll pay
exactly.
this other person.
Right. This is why I think if you created this possibility where you had this, and not even if you had a special tax, I mean, I think they do deserve to pay fewer taxes because I think they're good for society to be a democratic institution.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you didn't have some big difference, I think these institutions would just beat the non-democratic institutions, especially over the long run, because they don't have to hire consultants because all the knowledge is already known by the other employees. Man, if you want, I call this, I've heard that, maybe I've heard this, or maybe I call it this. I call it the L6 solution. L6 solution. So L6 just means at 6 degrees away from the CEO.
Okay.
So the CEO, their reports down 6. If you want a solution to any problem in your corporation, go down to L6 and just ask people, what's up? What's the biggest issue? What's the solution?
Right.
They'll tell you. They know. They're right on the front lines, They know how it works. But people don't do that. L1 or L0, the C-suite, just talks to L1.
Yeah.
They all just talk to the VPs.
Idea of I would
the
go
VPs
down
don't
and talk
know.
to the bottom level of this corporation doesn't exist.
They just won't do it.
Yeah.
But if it's a Democratic corporation, L6 runs the place. L6 elected the CEO, and they can send an email to that person and be like, "Hey, I voted for you. Here's some things I got to say to you." And so that the knowledge would actually flow through the corporation effectively. Anyway, so I think it's not just like, oh, we should do this, even though it's kind of like going to hamstring. I'm like, no, I think this will actually make better. In some cases, the tyrannical business will do better. In other cases, the democratic business will do better. But either way, having both will be better for America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you would start this out by like letting people know, hey, here comes, January's coming. You're going to have to switch and choose between, are you going to classify yourself as Democratic corporation? Or are you going to classify yourself as you're open to the Tyrant Tax or whatever we call it, to try and
Tyrant Tax.
to try and get people.
I love that.
And then you give people enough time to check it out and figure out what they're going to do. And then there's a deadline and then it's like, boom, that's the new paradigm going forward. Okay.
Oh man. The episode name should be The Tyrant Tax. That's the way it should be. It should be like, some left-wing, sort of person should come out and say, and propose this bill. The Tyrant Tax. If you're running a non-democratic organization, your taxes double.
Yeah.
In 2024.
Because, I mean,
I love that.
Talk about positioning your message to popular, like the only people upset with that idea of a tyrant tax are the alleged people who would become
the tyrants.
Yes.
Yeah, the tyrants.
They're
only
like,
the tyrants.
No, how dare you? I want all the power and not to pay for it.
Yeah, I want all the power and all the money, and I want to be able to just fire people, and I'm in charge, and screw you, no matter what you do, screw you. Yeah.
I mean, what person working at the low level of a job, like you're the cashier of whatever your job, doesn't like look and see the problems on the ground and go, I wish I could just have
just fix this
half an hour to tell the person, hey, here's the things that actually suck that you will not know about, because if I tell my manager, the last thing they're going to do is complain to their manager who complain. Like it's not going to make,
it won't go up.
That game of telephone doesn't doesn't make, like, nobody wants to give bad news to the level above them unless they have to. So if they don't have to, that game of telephone is not happening. So I think what the critics would say to this, who are essentially tyrannical shills, the shills for the tyrants, which the tyrants have many shills, so there would be a very strong opposition. But I think what they would say is, look, this is how they always talk. Look, we're so smart. We're so much smarter than you. What they would say is, if you create this tyrant tax, then, which they would never want to use that language because it'd be totally giving the narrative away. I mean, it's very charged. That's a charged language. Yeah, for sure.
So they'd say, if you create this unfair tax, then all you're going to do is you're hurting like mom and pop. First of all, I'd say you're hurting mom and pop businesses where they want to be the single owner. And therefore, they're going to pay the tyrant tax. So this would probably say, if the business has fewer than some cutoff 150 employees, then there is no tyrant tax.
Right, too small. Small fish aren't included in this pond.
You get to be the sort of king of your castle if you have smaller than 200 employees or something.
Yeah.
But you could say I don't know, maybe 200 employees is actually kind of a lot. But anyways, you could make some kind of cutoff. 50 employees. You can do whatever you want. But then, so that's good. But then the other thing they would say is, this tax is going to, make American businesses uncompetitive, because like GM and Intel and like Apple aren't going to become democratic. And therefore they're going to be taxed at this crazy rate. And that's going to make them, they're going to run away from America or something. They always say this, they're going to flee America if you raise taxes on them. But I think it's like, no, let's give them a pathway to democracy. Let's say, look, Apple could just implement. They have only a few thousand employees, really. I mean, maybe 30,000 employees. They could implement a democracy. It's only 30,000 people. That's smaller than like a tiny city. And that tiny city runs elections all the time, does a whole democracy. And they're Apple. So they're a super sophisticated software company.
They should have
the
tech
do
abilities.
It. They could totally do it. Anyways, so I think, but they would say that. They would say, well, look, Apple, or they would say, look, Steve Jobs ran Apple. And if he hadn't been able to be like the tyrant of Apple, then it wouldn't have succeeded as well, and therefore you're hurting American businesses by doing this tax.
But the idea that every company is run by a Steve Jobs is also a little bit why. Like, some people are not like, I need to, that's a unique person to put up as an example where you're like,
and also you want to say like, look, it's fine, you can run a tyrant tax. Look at Apple; they're very successful. If you think that being a tyrant makes you so much more successful, then you can afford to pay higher taxes. Because you're so much more successful.
Does this? It feels like this is kind of getting into the realm that like unions try to, when workforce is unionized, that they're trying to kind of address that, where they're like, we would like a collective airing of our problems, discussion of ways to improve this thing, like that sort of thing. But it feels more, that description, what you're describing feels less antagonistic than the labor, the union and CEO like sort of back and forth I'm aware of.
Yeah, unionization is a form of democratic workplace. It's more democratic, right? Because through your union, the union is essentially a democracy, right? You can vote for things, you can do things. And then the union reps go and directly talk to the executive. So instead of it being democratic in the corporation, it's kind of like the workers create their own separate
inner
sort of
organization
hierarchy, and then they have the top of each hierarchy can like talk. I think that's fine. I mean, I'm definitely pro union, and I'm unionized. I'm part of a union, and it's been great. We got huge 5% raises this year because of the union.
Nice.
It's great. Everyone should join unions. Actually, I go around and tell people, why don't you guys union? I was in Men's Warehouse the other day to get a suit,
buying some men,
and I asked the guy, I was like, oh, have you guys thought of unionizing? Like, have you guys looked into unionizing? Because he looked really tired. He's like, oh, I'm tired. I've been working for like 10 hours.
Did you tell him this?
Yeah, I said,
like, you look really tired.
I said, you look really tired. Like, why don't you unionize? And he was like, oh, I don't know. I haven't thought of that. And I was like, yeah, unionize. Men's Warehouse should unionize all their reps. and then you could demand more money and better times and better pay, and they couldn't do anything because what are they going to do? They can't fire you for being a union, So, anyways, yeah, unions are great, and there should be way more. Did you see the UPS? There might be a big UPS strike. That's next year. It's going to be the biggest strike in like American history.
Okay,
it's like 200,000 workers are going to strike on UPS. Their Amazon packages won't be delivered for,
I mean, I'm keyed in to movies and TV type talk on my socials, and so I'm aware of the WGA, the writer's strike, the actor's strike now.
The writer's strike. Yep,
is a big
also
thing about that.
Strike. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, so strikes are great, unions are great, and that's a form of democratic workplace too. I don't think now you could maybe you also don't get the tyrant tax if something like 80% of your workforce is unionized. Then you also are exempt. Now that's good. That's a really good way to get exempted from it too. Hey,
that's
Scott's
good benefit.
Yeah, you really came up with that.
Oh, you're going to credit me that was all
you came up with that.
I just
you were like,
what
about unions? I didn't even think about it. Yeah, I mean, I had thought about it before this conversation, but in this conversation we hadn't discussed unions, and I think you're right. That could be another way to get exempt from the tyrant tax is 80% or something. 75%.
Yeah, you don't want to classify yourself as a Democrat. Then at least show us that you're good faith, allowing unions to exist and allowing workers to like advocate for their own circumstance. Like that could also be a way toward satisfying this requirement that doesn't double your tax burden.
Right. Man. Okay, so when we started talking about this, I was like, obviously, I haven't really parsed it out fully. We've been hashing it out a lot, and you've been helping a lot. But man, when I started out, I was kind of shaky on it. Like, I was like, this is a neat idea, but like, could it really be implemented? Could it really? Man, the more we talk about it, the more I think this is a really good idea.
I mean,
like if a politician tomorrow said, I'm launching this bill, the tyrant tax, this is how you get away from it. You unionize, you would be a co-op, and you get to avoid the tyrant tax, but otherwise you pay this extra bump in taxes. That would be such a powerful thing to do. And that would be awesome. Anyways, I'm not trying to like pat myself on the back here, but
no,
I'm like seeing it really clearly right now.
Great. I like it. Well, this has been, I'm on board. I mean, the way you described it, you say at the beginning, Democratic, the way a lot of these work, you start out with the thing and I go, all right, I don't know what you're talking about. And then by the end, I'm like, okay, I'm on board. I like it.
I think there would be, the shills, the tyrants, the shills of the tyrants would try to come up with all these different arguments against it. Blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, people who would be losing power always complain about it.
Yeah. And they would have economists who say, I'm independent. I'm just an economist. I don't have any buy or good. And it's like, no, you're just a shill too. Well, you're just a total shill.
I mean, taking it back full
I don't
circle.
See any problem with it.
When America was like, how about we do our own thing and govern it with, voting and stuff. The King of England was like, I actually don't think that's a good idea. If you're asking my opinion, my opinion is no, thank you.
Idea. And we have experts. I mean, we don't hear the history though of like all the experts that then he rolled out to say, I'm an expert in how this should work, and you definitely shouldn't do this. But that's what that's what they do,
and that's why everyone ran over and dumped all of his microchips into the ocean, and he lost his ability.
Boston microchip party.
We would have had smartphones in 1776 if not for those darn patriots. Oh well,
dressed up as Native Americans.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. There was a little bit of cultural appropriation. Oh, are we allowed to be okay with the Boston Tea Party? I forgot that aspect.
Wire cross.
I mean, that's. I guess, would you say red face or what's...
That's the equivalent if a bunch of people in blackface were abolitionists. Would we still be able to celebrate them? That's so funny.
Interesting. Like
so
you got,
weird.
Sorry guys, Boston Tea Party, you've been canceled. You're canceled. Didn't happen.
Sorry, Boston.
Take it out of the history books.
You're canceled.
You're canceled. They're like, we're just dressing up like Native Americans. What's the problem? It's like, well,
just because you asked that question
200
shows that you don't understand the importance of cultural appropriation. Respecting people's. I don't know how to
we are currently guilty of cultural appropriation.
Yeah, we're doing a
terrible Boston accent. Oh no!
Sorry, everyone.
Maybe we should cut this before we get too deep into quicksand. We can't get out.
All right. Thanks everybody for riding along on what was kind of a rough. I mean, there was we really figured that out.
This was good. This was a good turn.
It was scrappy.
Hey, we followed the normal arc. We had a little bit big beginning, figured our way out in the middle, and now we got our big finish, just like a fireworks show.
Boston micro, just 3-act
fireworks show. The 3-act structure of the fireworks.
That's right.
And we can let everyone get back to their potato salad, macaroni salad, barbecues, and picnics. That'll be good.
Enjoy parades.
All right. Well,
get those streamers on your bike.
I'll see you next time, Adam. And
take care.
Thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hey there. Thanks for listening to that episode of Solutions from the Multiverse.
Yep, we're back with a little after roll. Hello.
Hey, after roll. Roll that after roll. So basically, we want you to subscribe.
Yeah.
And rate and review. And tell someone. Like, take your favorite solution and send it to someone who you think it would like blow their mind to hear it.
Yeah, we love making the show. We're proud of it. And we're excited. We want other people to show. We know that the main way people find podcasts is word of mouth. I know that's true for me. I listen to my friends who also listen to podcasts tell me about ones, and I go, okay, I'm cluing into that. So we want to be part of that chain.
So thanks for being a part of Solutions.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again real soon.
Bye.
Bye.